discussion regarding topics which may be scheduled for official action at a later board meeting. During this meeting, we will not be voting or making any final decisions on any topic. Our meeting tonight is being videotaped for the first time for the community cable channels by our school district. Individuals attending the meeting tonight and intending to speak to the board should be aware that you are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, we record the names and addresses of all citizens who address the board. To assure that we are able to do this, we ask that when you have a question or concern for the board, you come up to the podium and use the microphone and give us your name and address before you make your comments. We also ask that you limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes in order to give all those who wish to speak to the board the opportunity to do so. Before we get into the body of our agenda, I want to address one other topic this evening that's on our agenda. We have on our agenda this evening the elementary attendance boundaries. We have a preliminary report coming to the board. While we are scheduled to receive the proposal from the committee and the administration tonight, the board will be taking no action on these proposed attendance boundaries. We will not be voting, nor is the administration or committee making any final recommendation this evening. This is a preliminary report, and all parents have been notified that following the preliminary report to the board, there will be 2 public meetings. They are scheduled for October 26th at Gwen-Nor Elementary and October 28th at the Montgomery Elementary School. These meetings have been scheduled for the sole purpose of discussing the proposed boundary changes and allowing parents and all those with concerns to present their input to the committee directly. The board will then discuss the committee's final recommendation at our committee meetings on November 9th. Until then, there could very well be adjustments and changes, which could be the result of the discussion by the parents at those 2 public meetings. The board will then be expected to vote on a final recommendation on Thursday evening, November 18th at our action meeting. So the purpose tonight is for the board to be introduced to the topic and receive the preliminary proposal. We will not invite any audience participation in the discussion of attendance boundaries this evening. If there is anyone here tonight who cannot attend either of the scheduled parent meetings that are set up for input, we would encourage that you write a letter expressing your concerns and send it to either Dr. Elko, the superintendent, Mr. Keffer, who is chairing the committee, or to myself. These letters and concerns will then be distributed to the entire board and to all the appropriate people working on the redistricting. We'll now move on to bond refinancing under finance. Bill?
Thank you, Pat. Tonight we're going to hear 2 proposals from our bond council. One concerning current bond issues and our repayment of those bonds, and another topic concerning long-term borrowing implications of how we would structure that borrowing. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Glenn Williard from Public Financial Management.
Thank you. Good evening. It's nice to be here again. I'd like to speak from the document we've passed around with an orange cover page. We were here last in the summer to look at refunding one of the district bond issues. An opportunity had presented itself. Since then, interest rates have dropped. As you can see on the bottom of page 1, they've come down maybe another 25 to 50 basis points. That would be 1/4 to 1/2%. They're a little bit lower yet still. And now the Series A of 1992 bond issue, the $25 million that was done in the spring of 1992, presents itself as a candidate to be refunded, and that's the first topic that we'd like to report to you about. If you turn to page number 2, there's a summary then of a couple of options we'd like to discuss. You may remember when we were here in the summertime, we looked at refunding for the first time portions of a different bond issue because of the negative arbitrage that happens in an escrow account. What the negative arbitrage is when the district borrows money at 5% and needs to invest it at 3% until the old bond issue can be called. Of course, anytime you're borrowing at 5 and investing at 3, there's a loss or an opportunity cost, and that's called negative arbitrage. So with option 1, for presentation purposes, sort of as the plain vanilla model, if we refund all of the Series A of 1992 bonds in option 1, there would be about $325,000 of savings, net of all the expenses. There would be about $240,000 of what we call this negative arbitrage. In other words, in a perfect world, if you added those 2 numbers together, you would have about $570,000 worth of savings. But because of this negative arbitrage, you can only realize $325,000. That's if you refund all of the bonds. That's what we've called option 1. We're not recommending that, but just to show you what happens if you do all of the bonds. With option number 2, Because the district has already issued bonds in calendar year 1993, if you remember from our prior meetings, if you issued less than $10 million in a calendar year, you can designate your bonds as being bank qualified. We've already issued more than $10 million for calendar year 93. Doesn't mean you cannot issue any more this year. It just means that any other issues would not be bank qualified. You then have a clean slate in 1994. What option 2 does is refund. We sort of backed into how many bonds can you refund in 93 and still leave a clean slate for 94. So here what happens with option 2 is you could refund about $10.5 million of these old bonds. There would be $140,000 of savings today. And if you want to make a note in the margin, the remaining $9.4 million could be refunded in as early as January with a savings of $290,000. So really option 2 is $140,000 in December plus $290,000 in January for a total of $430,000. Now the reason we just spelled it out with $140,000 is we wanted to point out that you would be issuing $10.5 million and only saving 1.5% with the 93 bond issue, and then saving 2.5% when we got to January. So in total, you would issue about $20 million in bonds and save about a little over $400,000, or 2%, which has been your minimum threshold. And then option 3 requires that you do nothing in calendar year 93. You wait until January of 1994. Now we would only issue $10 million in 94. We save $312,000, or 3%, but now there's no more bond issues would be available to you until 1995 in terms of being bank qualified. So it seems to us the options are we could implement option 2, saving $430,000 between December and January and refunding almost all of the bonds. Or with option 3, we can save $312,000 in January and leave $10 million of bonds to be refunded probably sometime in 1995. So it's a question of is $430,000 locked up and put to rest a better number than saving $300,000 and then having the opportunity to come back and do it at a future time. And I think that's what it boils down to, option 2 or option 3. Now we believe that if the district decided to implement option 2 at a board meeting in mid-November, we could bring to you both proposals to lock up both the 93 bond issue and the 94 bond issue. The interest rates could be solidified at a November board meeting. In other words, we would settle one bond issue. You would take action in November, settle one bond issue December 30th, and another bond issue January 4th, something like that.
And you can lock the interest rates in ahead of time.
In November, yes.
And we're allowed this much time between issuing the bonds and settling on the, so from mid-November, it'll be something like the 20th until first business day in January?
Normally, the convention in Pennsylvania is roughly 30 days between the time the board takes action and settlement. That's typical. I think if we had a bond sale, let's say November 15th for discussion's sake, and you went to January 2nd or 4th, something like that, that would be 45 days. In the past, we've been able to get buyers to hold their proposals for 45 days.
Glenn, could we assume that in option 3 on the $10.9 million callable in the future, that if interest rates stay approximately where they are now, we could recall those and produce about $290,000 in savings, so that we would have a total of almost $600,000 in savings over 2 years on option 3?
That's correct. With option 3, the last line, the remaining $10.9 million, if you waited, we ran the numbers waiting until January of 95, there'd be about $290,000 in January of 95, assuming interest rates stayed exactly the same.
A question, Glenn, because that's over 10 million by itself, and we're projecting needing to borrow money in 1995 for a high school, would you get the full 290 out of it? Because assuming it's not bank qualified.
When we ran the numbers, we did assume bank qualified. We turned the issue size back to 10 million, since it was 10.9 million. We rounded it back to 10 million. That produced 290. But your point is well taken. Probably in '95, the district would need to issue anyway and not get the bank qualified rate.
If it's not bank qualified, what kind of numbers are we talking
If
about?
it's not bank qualified, it's probably a number like 125 to 150.
But you're still gambling on the fact that in '95, the rates will either be the same or they will have gone
Better.
down.
That's right.
And the general inclination is that that's not going to happen.
If rates would have gone up in '95, you'd be better off to have done option 2.
So,
What's that?
but the feel of the business world right now is that '95, the rates have pretty much bottomed out and they're gonna start going up.
I hate to say that because I've been accused of saying that too many times.
I've been here 2 years in a row, about every 6 months, and
Yeah,
every time you're
you're
here, we
right.
say, well, this is the bottom. It's never gonna go lower, and it's gone lower 2 years in a row. Basically, we're gambling on option 3 between, not '95, but October or November of '94, which is when we would sell them and lock them in for sale or for collection in January of '95, correct?
But I think Ralph's point is that even if you issued bonds November of '94 to settle January of '95, you still may not be able to get bank qualified rates because I think by then your building, the rest of your building program starts kicking in.
Glenn, what's the present value of what we would see on option 3 versus what we would get on option 2? Did you run any of those numbers to see, given interest rates stay the same, what's the money in today's dollars?
Well, all of these savings are
Actual.
received by the school district in the first
Whenever.
2 school years. So basically, the present value are these numbers as presented.
But the
It's
future
not-
value of 3 is that we don't see that until '95, essentially. So the value to us in 1993 is something it's something less because of inflation, et cetera, so.
If you went out 2 years, at 5%, it would be 90 cents on the dollar. So the 290 would be worth about 90 cents on the dollar. That's
So you roughly
75 or
lose,
something.
yeah, 60K or 30K.
Yeah, but that 290 is only worth about 150 in reality because of the non-bank qualified
Non-bank qualified.
nature of 95.
Yeah, I favor 2.
I would think we would go with, 2 seems to be the better issue if you're going to be banking on money now, and we know that we're going to be borrowing in '95. You really don't want to have that on top of everything else added to it. So,
Benefit by way of
Maybe-
January.
Dennis, could you explain maybe the impact of millage, since we do have some millage yet to fold in on this bond?
What's that?
The impact of the millage increase, if we should take option 2 versus option 3?
Well, we still have 1.2 million in debt service that'll kick in next year. The 600, if we go with the 600,000, would reduce that. So we're looking at about 3 million for debt service for next year's budget.
Now, in option 3, we wouldn't realize the 600,000. It would be over a 2-year period. Option 2, we'd realize 430,000 over 1 year, about
Which would be almost
$1.5 million.
That's more what I was getting at.
I think just one portion about option 2 I'd want you to be aware of is that the first issue would only have about 1.5% in savings. And that's troubled us before, but I think if you look at it with the total package, we'd be at 2%. Is there anything else on, if you have no other questions on that page, sort of as a separate thought process, if you just kind of clear the slate and start over.
Glenn, before you go into
Yes,
the
I'm sorry.
to the next piece, it's not completely related to this, perhaps, Bill, you want to get closure in terms of direction?
Yeah, for any other comments or questions from the board members? Go ahead.
Yeah, Glenn, on the option 2 on the savings here, have you provided us with a net savings here? Or is that a gross number?
No, those are net of 2
Those are
things.
fees out of
Net of
there?
all the fees and expenses and net of the anticipated state sharing of the savings.
Okay. So all the options were provided in net savings?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Does anybody from the audience have any questions concerning the first topic here? All right, with that,
Option 2.
yeah, we'll move on to option 2. We'll deal with closing both of them when you're finished.
Then if we could turn to page 9, please. I think in discussing this with the administration, we had lots of spreadsheets and schedules, but we thought page 9, in sort of a graphic format, was the best way to present this in 10 minutes or less.
If I could interrupt for a moment, Glenn, for those people in the audience, that would be the third page of your packet labeled North Penn School District Summary of Emmaus Bond Pool Options. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry. Wrong page.
Why don't I try to talk from page 8, and then we can go to page 9.
Page 8. That is the Emmaus Bond Pool Options which you have.
On page 8, we've labeled, for lack of a better term, the base case or the situation that the district is in right now, and recognizing our current situation with negative arbitrage in our construction fund. Just like with a refunding bond issue, the district has borrowed money in round numbers at 5%. The money is invested at 3%. And at some point out in 1995, the district probably will go forward again with a second series of construction bonds. If rates stay the same, it'll be borrowing at 5 and investing at 3. Well, that we've called our base case situation. And then we want to show you 2 different options of how to improve that situation. Typically, we've looked at the bond side and refinancing and saving money as interest rates have come down. But because there is a significant construction fund, about $35 million, that's borrowed in 5 and invested at 3, we want to look at a way to enhance the interest earning side of the construction fund account. And that's what these next 2 options are. So the base case is money that has been borrowed as part of the Series A of 1992 bonds, part of the previous Emmaus borrowing. That is available for construction, and in round numbers is borrowed at 5 and invested at 3.5. And the plan is that when we get out somewhere into March of 1995, the district would do a second series of bonds. With option number 1, what we would do is take out a second loan or a new loan from the Emmaus General Authority, about $25 million. This money then would be taken and used to fund the next 18 months worth of construction projects. That will pay for the immediate construction needs. The construction fund you have currently, the $40 million or so that you have currently, instead of investing that at 3%, you now will be able to extend that out into the 1995-1996 investment horizon. And instead of earning 3%, now you can invest at 4 and 4.5%. Okay? Now when the Emmaus loan comes due in 1995, you'd issue your new capital project bonds just as you had planned to do back in the base case. And the benefit is that now your construction fund, instead of being invested at, say, 3 to 3.5%, can be invested at 4 and 4.5%. From the debt service point of view, you will be issuing new bonds in 1995, just as you have planned to do under the base case. You're going to wait until sometime in 1995 to issue those new bonds. You issue them at the same time. So from the debt service point of view, things are exactly the same. From the construction fund point of view, we're now able to take the $35 million you have on hand and invest it at higher yields. We would invest out into 96 and 97 are sort of the key points here. That we've labeled as option 1. That produces a benefit of in excess of $500,000. With option number 2, the only difference with option 2 is now the money, instead of being invested out into 1996 and 1997, the money is invested until about March of 1995. Again, under the base case scenario, in March of 95, you probably will be issuing new money bonds anyway. So in March of 1995, you would invest at whatever the rates are in 1995. So now with option number 2, instead of investing out to 96 and 97, we only invest the monies to 1995. This produces about $200,000 of benefit and gives you the ability then, when you get to 95, of investing at whatever interest rates are in 95, and also you have the ability to invest more accurately to what the new draw schedules would be when you get to 1995. Keeping in mind, if we would invest out into 96 and 97 today, we would be making investment decisions for some project that's 3 or 4 years away. So with option 2, all the money comes due again in March of 95. You get a clean slate, you get 1995 interest rates, and you can invest according to where you believe the draw schedules are in 1995. Obviously, that's gonna produce less of a benefit, because you're not invested out 4 and 5 years, but I think it more accurately coincides with the base case listed up above. If we could turn to page 9, this is sort of a graphic presentation of what I've tried to describe. The existing plan, or the base case, is on the left-hand side. Again, you have 35 to 40 million of proceeds from prior bond issues borrowed at 5. It's invested out through 1994 and 95 at 3.5%. And again, the second series of construction bonds would be done probably sometime in 1995. If the interest rate environment stays the same, they'd be borrowed at 5 and invested at 3.5. That's sort of what we call the base case. Under the Emmaus plan, we would take the 40 million that you have today and invest it out. Here it shows 96, 97, but that's option 1. With option 2, we would invest it out to 1995. We would use a loan from the Emmaus General Authority, which could be borrowed at 3%. It's a short-term construction loan. It would be invested at 3%. And again, in 1995, you would repay the Emmaus loan with the new bond issue you would have issued anyway over on the left-hand side of the page. Depending on the scenario, option 1 or 2, again, the savings are either over 500,000 or 200,000. I think option 2 is the most conservative. It probably more accurately tracks what you would do over in the base case anyway, having the money available in 1995 for the interest rates available in 95, and also, depending on whether the construction projects are accelerated or decelerated, you can more accurately invest for when you're going to need the money. That's sort of a 10-minute summary of what can be a pretty detailed set of schedules. We have all the backup information if you'd like to go through it, but why don't I stop here and see what questions you might have.
I just have one question. As I'm listening to you, it seems to me that the draw schedule is probably a critical component, be it option 1 or 2, and that schedule will be sometime from 95 out, and I'm wondering, do we have a time schedule on it, on the draw past 95?
I think that page 10 is the best estimates of the administration.
All right, estimates.
As to where we have refined it as best we could. While it is estimated, we have gone through some due diligence in trying to accurately portray it. We have beginning in column 10, just to help you through this. Beginning in I'm on page 10, column 10. We have the new elementary schools. Column 11 is the 2 middle schools. Column 12 is the junior high. Column 14 is the new high school. And column 15 are some capital purchases. And column 1 are the dates, so you can see how they fit together.
Question, Glenn. All of these savings, in either case 1 or 2, those are savings that are realized by having to borrow less money
In
1995.
Right, so they would not occur in your general fund budget for budgeting purposes or something like that.
But it's going to cause us to reduce the amount that we have to borrow by that amount, by those amounts. Have you done any analysis on the slide? If I understand this right, the risk of case 1 is that interest rates would go up and would have money invested in 95, 96, and into 97 at 4.5%, and we could be paying more.
That could be earning more. Yes.
If we had used the other way. But if we go base case 2, when we do that borrowing, we're going to be short-term investing that construction loan during the construction of the high school. The question is, have you done anything to say if you go case 1, how much do the interest rates have to go up before that we start running it down to the $200,000? It's $400,000.
It becomes very subjective because it's not only interest rates going up and down, it's also the yield curve. In other words, interest rates in the 12 months and the 24 months, how do they change?
Okay.
So it becomes very subjective and
risky.
I think, Ralph, that's why the option number 2 appears to be a more conservative, and also ties into Donna's comment about we really know what's going to be out there in terms of draws and projects, and 96 and 97 with the same degree of certainty that we know is going to be out there in 3, 4, and 5.
Question, Glenn, are we limited to where we can invest the money that we have? I'm finding it difficult to understand why we can only invest at 3% or 4% or 3.5%. What's limiting us to seeking out higher rates? Obviously, since we're borrowing at 5% with a good rating, there's maybe some other investments that are out there that are available at more than 5% or at 5% to where we don't have the negative arbitrage.
It's a good question. I would try to answer that with page 10 maybe. I think would be the, what's limiting the amount of money or the amount of earnings is, of course, the time that you can invest the money. In column number, for instance, 10 and 11 and 15, we need to have about $1.5 million a month available for immediate construction. So we're only investing, as an example, we need to have $1.5 million available for November, $1.5 million available for December, January, and February. So we can't go out and invest the money for 12 months and 18 months when we need to pay construction draws in 3 months and 4 months and 5 months. So we're earning the highest yields we can within the parameters of how far out in time we can invest the money. If we could invest the money in a 30-year treasury, we could earn 6%. If we're buying a 30-day CD, we can only invest at 3%. If that answers the question.
It would seem to me that we have this big lump of money right now, and that we could buy a 3-year, a 2-year, a 1-year, a 15 months, whatever, to meet our needs. Wouldn't that money management work better in terms of some of the money might make 5%, some might make only 3%? The money that we need right away, we take a hit and invest at the lower interest rate just to get some interest on it. But then, as we foresee, because we've laid out our schedule fairly well and understand the needs of that money at specific times and time phasing, then we can go look for and search for 15-month, 18-month, whatever.
You're exactly right. Still on page 10, maybe try column 3. I'm saying the money's invested at 3%. Page 10, column 3.
Mm-hmm.
And there we've tried to put in some yields. We're 3% for the first 6 months, 3.25% for the next 6 months, 3.5% for the third 6 months. I mean, we have taken into account, I'm generalizing for this presentation, but we have taken into account that the farther out in time you go, the greater yield you can pick up. So we are doing what you're describing.
Okay, and so what we're saying is that if interest rates essentially stay the same by option 2 here, we're going to go back to start over at square one in 95 again.
That's right.
Okay.
You have the ability to invest at whatever. In other words, if rates were 10% in 1995, you'll have all the money as cash March of 95 to go out and invest at 10%.
That we borrowed at 5%.
That's right.
Good, then I'm going to favor that.
Glenn, there were some
Because it's going up.
stipulations about borrowing from the Emmaus bond pool.
It's going up.
Is that part of why this
We
is
have
set up the way it
Clinton
is?
Well, the Emmaus program is designed to be a construction loan program, and you need to reasonably expect to spend the money by the maturity date. Is that what you're referring to?
Right, I knew there were some stipulations that were
Yeah, it's
specific
not-
to this.
It's not, it's a grandfathered bond pool program. It's grandfathered under the old 1986 regulations. You are grandfathered under some of the technical things that will not count as a borrowing for calculating the $10 million limit, as an example. It's one of the features. There are some arbitrage subsidies that they pass through to you, and that has been taken into account in showing you some of these benefits.
Isn't there a ceiling of how much you can borrow within that pool?
The ceiling is, it's not a federal or state ceiling, it's set by the program itself, and they've set the program at, limit at $50 million. We're saying here that you could reasonably expect to spend $25 million by March of 1995, and that's all you'd be allowed to borrow, yeah.
Thank you.
Dennis, do we have a handle on the total borrowing that we would need? If we didn't do anything, we just sat here and we waited till 95, 96, what do we have to borrow based on our best estimates now?
That's
For
on
everything we
page
wanna
10,
do.
When Art and I had sat down and went over the draw schedule, and that's where we came up with, see on page 10 under additional bonds and column 18.
28. That's obviously subject to change.
Yeah, subject to change depending on cost estimates. And
So essentially by borrowing now, we're getting 2 years, we're getting the money for 2 years and paying no interest,
that's correct.
and we're not paying to borrow the money.
Right.
We have it available to us, and
Exactly.
it doesn't cost us a dime.
That's right.
We should offer that.
Not exactly.
Yeah,
only
can
a
you
bank.
work that with my bank?
Well, as a technical matter, you're actually making interest payments,
Yes,
but
I'm-
we've calculated that into all this.
Yeah, but it's still a net
Right.
benefit to us.
Right.
Nothing's free.
Yeah, it's not true that you're paying nothing.
Nothing's
Well,
free,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, but we're making money
We're
on
just
both
benefiting
options.
from it.
But the net is going to be that
Yes.
the
It's to our
expenditure will be
advantage.
nothing.
We're in a positive cash
When,
flow.
when
Right,
you
we're borrowing money,
positive,
making money.
the assets and the credits and the debits will equal out.
Technically, you would be required to make monthly interest payments, but that has all been capitalized in the loan, like you capitalized interest in the past.
Do you have the gross numbers with you? You provided in 1 and 2, the net benefit, what was the gross number?
I don't have that with me. With the Emmaus program, there would be less than $100,000 of issuance expenses.
And
I
in
could
2,
guess it.
same thing? In 2, it would be less?
Yeah, the issuance expenses would be about the same. It's really, the only difference between 1 and 2 is how far out in time the money's invested to. With option 2, it's invested till the spring of '95. With option 1, it's invested to '95, '96, and '97, different dates out through there.
And just to put you on a spot, are your fees the same as they were the last time you came before us?
For the Emmaus transaction,
Yes.
it probably would be a little bit less.
Less? Thanks, Bill.
It's a cut rate.
Bill, in terms of timing, if the board would decide that they wanted to implement the Emmaus construction cash management program, for lack of a better designation, picking option 1 or 2, we could also try to implement that the same evening that we did the 2 bond issues. So collectively, what we would have is an estimated $430,000 of savings available in terms of budgetary money, and another $200,000 available in terms of the reduction in terms of future borrowings by the district. So the total package of savings would be about $600,000. And we could implement that, or we would do our best to implement it at the same point in time.
And from a vote at the November meeting, when would the transactions be finalized for this second proposal? Is that something that happens in '94, does that happen in
The
'95?
Emmaus bond pool and bond issue, 1993 school district general obligation bond issue, would settle about the same point in time. And then the 1994 bond issue would settle about the first business day following the first of the year.
Now, the two aren't tied together.
No, but we need to
No.
take action in order to get the
My
ball.
question is, do we save more money by implementing the Emmaus pool this month? Understanding that on the bonds, we're locked into the end of the year and the beginning of next year. Can we run the numbers and vote on it this month and get into the Emmaus pool, which puts us another
Month.
2 months essentially ahead?
Interest-bearing accounts.
Yeah, let's get it done in understanding
I
that
think
it takes.
if you voted, the timing of the Emmaus legal requirements are the same as your own requirements. But I think if you were to vote to implement the Emmaus bond program, that could change immediately the nature of the investment program for the existing funds, so that they could get invested for longer term, since we now know
Exactly, that's my
that we would
point.
have
Right.
the 25 million coming in December, that 25 could be invested in November.
Yeah, I think if we were to do them all, say at the November 18th meeting, settlement for the Emmaus would be January 2nd, first business day of the month. If you were to take action yet in October, we could perhaps settle on December 1st. The Emmaus program can only make loans on the first business day of the month. So our two possibilities are to take action and have settlement by December 1, or take action and have settlement by January 2nd. you would pick up 1 month's worth of extra earnings. Off the top of my head, I'll say that's a $10,000, $20,000 kind of number.
Yeah, that's my thinking, is it, you know, if we're not encumbered by anything that causes us to have to wait till November, let's do it now and this month, decide what it is. I mean, those are pennies that we can save, and if, you know, looking at hundreds of thousands over 15 months, it seems to me that 20,000 is pretty close to about what we would save a month. Let's save 20 more thousand. Can you run the numbers in 10 days to do that, so that we can look at option 1 or 2?
Well, I think it is a $10,000 or $20,000 kind of number. It's just a matter of, we didn't, we wanted to give you time to think about this. If
Yeah.
you want to proceed, that's up to you. We can do it faster.
Dick, let me just ask you, I think your question is, if the board votes to proceed with the Emmaus pool, forgetting when it settles and forgetting how long it takes to implement, can't we immediately implement the reinvestment program for the existing
Right.
25?
Yes, that's what I want to do
That's
first.
Take 25
That's
million of the
the
money
30
we
days
have. and invest
Exactly,
it.
exactly.
So we don't have to wait until the Emmaus bond pool closes to redirect the investment of our construction
Right.
fund to realize an extra month's interest income. I think that's your question.
That's what I'm trying to get started, get it started now, so that happens, and we have that money to invest before we.
Okay. I think the one fine point there, we just need to make sure that we have money available for whatever the next 30 or 45 days worth of draws are up to January 1st.
Does that affect our refinancing?
No, it
Shouldn't.
won't
Second
affect
option.
the refinance.
Just
Should
wanna
be,
make sure.
yeah, should be totally
Yeah.
separate.
But, yes, so we can do that.
Good.
Okay, question,
I'd favor that.
question
Make sure you
becomes,
want to pay.
Which do we
yeah,
favor, 1 or
question,
2?
the question then becomes, for the board members, is option 1 or option 2? Are you willing to gamble and go for a higher interest rate over a longer period? Hoping that we have the draws down to an exact science, we don't need additional money, or are you less likely to gamble and willing to or rather have more money available 2 years from now? That's the question. You want to gamble?
I'm willing to wait it and see what it is on the 1st of March in 1995. I think that's the smart way to go.
You'd rather take option 2?
I think the interest rates, even though we're starting over, are gonna be better than 3.5%. That's
I
my
think-
guess.
So you're in favor of option 2?
Option 2, that's what I'm in favor.
Not knowing what's gonna come down the pike, you're better off
It ain't gonna
going
be less
with
than
option
3.5.
2, so that you at least are covering your bases if things should pick up in 95. It would be an easier way to handle it, so I certainly would go with option 2.
Tom?
2.
Ralph?
2.
Pat?
2 makes sense.
Pat?
2.
2. 2. Okay, we've got that settled. We'll go back to the first one.
That'll be on then
Yes,
for a
Glenn, we
board
would-
vote
if
next
you can,
Thursday.
Dick and
Get
Glenn,
to come
for
visit us
next,
in 10 days. huh?
Providing that we
Thursday.
can pay
Next
the 2 months interest.
Sure.
Right.
2 months.
That we have, well, we have to pay 2 months interest, so provided that we have the money in our general fund to pay the interest for 2 months.
Right.
Almost
We
bonus
don't, we
situation,
just
maybe
don't
we should
invest
wait.
as much. If not, Donna can pay.
do we have any,
Well, I think it's like $112,000.
do we have any questions?
A little
That's
hefty.
pretty great for somebody who's about to be fired from Martin Marietta.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
I'll write a check.
Any questions? from
Bill,
the
I just
audience?
had one more question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Dennis, where does this put us as far as the state's concerned about our bond issues and our limitations and things of that?
Oh, we're
be a
fine.
problem.
We're still well under what the regulations are for our.
Even
our-
provided
Thanks.
some of the legislature that's coming up, we
That will
would
not-
still be
we're
within
still
those
well within the
guidelines?
limits.
Okay, thank you.
We've directed Glenn on the second portion of his topic tonight, but we have to go back to the first one. Discuss either option 2 or option 3 with respect to current refinance.
I'll say 2.
Has everybody forgotten that? or-
Two.
Two.
No.
We can't go to
So
3.
we got
I
op-
think in keeping with 2 and the other one,
Keeping with
the
2 and the other one.
philosophy that we used for the second part,
That was lucky,
then
too.
we would favor option 2 this part
Yeah.
too.
Okay, I would agree with that.
The 2's
2,
have it.
Ralph?
2.
On down the line then for
I
2?
thought we did this earlier.
All right, well, we said we'd come back to this and
Just so
finalize it.
Mr. Potash and I know what our marching orders are, we will prepare a resolution for your consideration next Thursday that would authorize the implementation of option 2 for both the refunding of the Series A of 1992 bonds, and option 2 with respect to the cash management construction program for the Emmaus bond.
Our authority in October doesn't affect when you go to the market to sell them, so we gain the 94 benefit. Okay.
Now, wait a minute, the resolution on the bonds, the Series A of 92, we don't do until November?
I'm talking about the board action authorizing us to go ahead and proceed and implement it. And then we would look to November 18th
For final action?
for final action on as much as what we can get done between now and the 18th.
Great.
All right, so we will see you next Thursday and again then towards the end of November.
Dennis, by next Thursday, I would like to have the breakdown on the gross monies, all the fees and issuance fees. I'm more than morbidly curious as to how much everybody gets.
Do we
That's part of
need
it.
Glenn and Dick next Thursday?
No, I don't
Take
think.
action on the resolution?
I don't think so.
Save you a trip.
Unless you have some more money.
Charlie, because
Find some more money.
Charles can have it.
We love when you come. You always
Thank you,
bring us
gentlemen.
good
Thank you very much. Every time you come here, it's good news.
news. Thanks, guys.
On that happy note, Pat, it's the end of finance.
Okay, Bill, keep saving us money.
Yes, it is.
Okay, we will move then on to curriculum. Pat?
Yes, the first item on our curriculum agenda is the RIF, Reading is Fundamental, and I believe Mr. Keffer is going to address that.
This is the third year that we ask the board's approval to participate in Reading is Fundamental. Reading is Fundamental is a nonprofit organization whose purpose is to promote literacy. And one of their primary ways of doing this is to encourage school districts to establish partnerships with business and industry for the purpose of raising funds which go to pay for books which are distributed to children. In North Penn, what that means specifically is that we have slightly more than 1,000 first graders, and for a contribution on the board's part of $2,500 to match a $2,500 contribution by United Gas Improvement, who has a subsidiary, AmeriGas in Culpsville, we would be able to 3 times this year have an activity that promotes reading with the first graders, and each time, each first grader would get to select a book which becomes their personal possession. We have had great success with this in the 2 prior years. We think that some 3,000 books to distribute to children is a good buy for $2,500. So we ask your approval to participate.
Any questions from the board on this?
Just a quick one. Charlie, on the agreement itself, it says books purchased with these funds will be made available for pre-selection and ownership by the children served. They'll
Yes.
actually get to keep the books?
Each child gets 3 books,
Okay.
and they keep theirs.
Neat program.
It is very.
It is
Thank you.
money well spent. Are there any questions from the audience on this, the RIF program? Okay, that brings us to number 2. We will be receiving the report of the Citizens Task Force for realigning the elementary boundary areas. I believe this is the agenda that has brought so many new faces to our board meeting. I'd like to thank you all for coming out, and I would like to reiterate that there will be 4 opportunities to speak on this matter. We will have the meeting on the 26th, which is at Gwinnett Square Elementary School, not Gwinnett, okay? 26th at Gwinnett Square, the 28th at Montgomery. In addition, you will also be able to speak at the November committee meeting and the November board meeting. At the time we present this for the public meetings at Gwinnett Square and Gwinnett, we will have people available taking notes. When you do a massive redistricting like this, it's a very emotional topic. And as you see, what happens when you press the balloon in on one, how it one side, how it comes out on the other. We will have people available to take your recommendations and suggestions down so that we can address them at another meeting. I want to give you a little background on the task force. It started meeting in August of this year. It has representatives from 11 elementary schools, 2 of our elementary principals, Mr. Keffer as the head of elementary education, Judy Clark as special ed, our new student services, and myself as board liaison. Now, when Dr. Alco gave the charge to the task force, he pointed out 5 things he would like them to do. First was to suggest guidelines for realigning elementary attendance areas. Second, to provide advice to the administration in developing a plan for the realignment of attendance areas. Third, to review the plan prior to its recommendation to the superintendent and the board of school directors. Fourth, we needed to provide for attendance at community listening meetings and review input received. And fifth, to assist in presentations of the recommendations to the board of school directors. As we began our work, we were confronted with several facts which were indisputable. First, we had to take into consideration the board's plan that was, I think it was 91, when we decided to move the 6th graders back to elementary school. Now this means there will be an additional 900 students in the elementary schools. Second, you all know, God willing, we have, in 1994, we have 2 new 30-room elementary schools going online, Walton Farm and Bridle Path. And third, as the PEL and everybody riding around can see, we have to provide for future growth. All right? With these facts, our complicated process of realignment began. The process was not easy, but members maintained a strong belief that any plan must be one which benefits the needs of the whole system and not any specific neighborhoods. We worked under the premise that each elementary school should open next fall with a reasonable number of children and an allowance for future growth. Each decision regarding one attendance boundary had an impact on the other. The ripple effect was clear. This has been a thoughtful process. What will be presented tonight represents what the group feels is most equitable, reasonable, and a workable solution. With 18 people contributing, we have tried to consider many possibilities and many variations. And that's not to say that through these public input meetings, one of you may come up with a better plan. We're anxious to hear it. I want to personally thank all those who served with me on the task force, and I would like to introduce them to you now. We're fortunate to have many of them in attendance also tonight. So if you just stand, Lynn Abrams is here, and Lynn is president of Gwynnor Home and School. Representing Oak Park Home and School as its president, Ellen Allen. A.M. Culp, Allison Brick. Kathy DeVita, who is co-president of Knapp Home and School. Chris Duffy, which is Hatfield's Home and School president. Letitia Erickson, representing Montgomery as their president. Sharon Ivanek, Nash's Home and School president. Georgia Fiano, who is co-president of Nash. Debbie Grubby, president of York Avenue. Linda Mayer. Okay, Linda. And Linda's representing Gwynedd Square Home and School. Peggy McCormick from North Wales, as well as Mr. Schickling, principal of Englewood, Mr. Sugar, principal of North Wales, and Barb Sakrisky, co-president of Knapp Home and School. All right. Thank you all. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jan Fisher, a member of the task force who will continue the presentation. Jan is president of Englewood Home and School. Jan?
It is the responsibility of our committee to develop an elementary attendance realignment plan. To accomplish this task, we felt it was necessary to establish some guidelines to develop a proposed plan. The guidelines were as follows: proximity to schools, class size, future growth, space needed for specials such as art, music, and special education programs, and finally, minimizing the movement of our young people. The district used a computer program that generated data to develop the proposed elementary school boundaries, including the new Bridle Path and the Walton Farm schools. Proximity to the schools was one of the key factors considered. The committee felt it was important to maintain the current class size guidelines of not more than 25 students in K through 3 and not more than 28 students in grades 4 and 5. The plan we propose tonight fully achieves that guideline. Looking beyond current enrollment, allowances had to be made, of course, for future growth. Available data indicates that North Penn's elementary school enrollment will continue to grow. We also recognize the need to provide classroom space for art, music, and special education programs to the degree possible at this time. We were able to provide adequate space for special education and gifted programs in each school. However, it is not possible to provide classrooms for art and music in all of our schools. Some art and music teachers will still move from classroom to classroom with carts. Finally, we are all keenly aware of the need to minimize the movement of our children. However, in order to put 2 new schools into service, to provide space for 6th graders in each school, and to provide some growing space for our new students, it was necessary to propose moving approximately 1,530 students of the K through 6 population of approximately 6,900 students. Approximately 1,280 of those 1,530 students proposed to be transferred will go to the new schools, Bridle Path and Walton Farms. We believe that the plan proposed tonight reflects the guidelines I've just reviewed. And now I will turn the presentation over to Mr. Kemper.
Thank you, Jan. You should have a map in your possession, and I would like to use the map to present the task force's plan this evening. You should also have a copy of the proposal, which is labeled preliminary proposal for realigning attendance areas. Let me suggest that you take the packet you received and turn to page 4, because periodically as I make this presentation, I intend to refer to it. First, I want to emphasize something that Mr. Field said, that this was a complex process, and designing attendance areas that meets the needs of the total districts is a little bit like pulling on one leg of a spider web. What you pull on one side has a ripple effect throughout the entire thing, and I think it's critically important to keep that in mind as we go through, and I think you will see quickly how it has impacted all of the schools in the district except one. The York Avenue attendance area will not be affected. That is true for a variety of reasons. First, because it's very compact. Secondly, because it is not subject to a great amount of growth. It is fully built out. I doubt that there's more than 1 or 2 vacant building lots in that entire area. The growth that we experience at York Avenue periodically comes when homes that are owned by older people who have raised their families decide to move away, and those homes are good values. They're bought by younger families. We have watched that phenomenon for a number of years. With that exception, this plan does impact in some way on every other existing attendance area. I would like to say that the new attendance areas are outlined in heavy black lines. The schools are all identified, including Bridle Path and Walton Farm. And you will notice that there are a number of areas that are also outlined in red. Any area outlined in red is an area that is proposed to be moved to an attendance area different from the one that it currently is involved with. You will also notice that there are 5 areas that are shaded in gray. And I will talk about that as we go through this plan, but basically the gray shading indicates an area that was involved in the attendance area changes that the board made for the opening of the 91-92 area. So those 5 areas are in fact experiencing a second change, and I will address that as we proceed as well. The other numbers that you see identifying the areas that are involved in the change are numbered from 1 through 19. I did that because I felt it would expedite the presentation in that it's far easier to turn your attention to Area 1 than it is to say each time what the parameters of that are. You can read that for yourself. First, the major cause of realignment of the attendance areas, there are three. The two new schools, obviously, the idea that we need to create space in every elementary school for grade 6. That means that at least 2 rooms, in some cases 3, and in other schools 4, had to be provided to retain the 5th graders at the end of the year for grade 6. So it really amounts to either some shrinkage within each attendance area to accommodate that additional grade level, or it means a realignment. Very frequently, what has happened, it causes a domino effect. You gain space in one school by moving children out. There are several times to another school. There are several times in this plan where it appears a little bit unusual because we are moving children out of a given school and at the same time we're moving other children in. And I will address the reasons for that as we go. And then, of course, the third reason that's bringing all this about is clearly the Economy League studies and other data would indicate that our growth is not yet over. We will continue to grow. We do not wish to participate in this process and have to do this again in the very near future. Frankly, I hope it's the last time that I will ever have to engage in this process. We will see. I'd like now to ask you to turn your attention to the lower right corner of your map, the attendance area for the Bridle Path School. Clearly, keeping the concept of proximity in mind, the committee first decided that obviously the territory closest in to the Bridle Path School should go here, and that's designated as Area 1. That area presently goes to the Montgomery School. It would remove 168 youngsters through what will next year be grades 1 to 5 from the Montgomery attendance area. In addition to all that, there will be kindergarten youngsters from all of these areas that will be involved. But obviously, we won't know what that number is until we register in March. For our planning purpose, we have made an assumption, which we make every year in planning future sections and staffing, and that is the assumption always has been that the kindergarten will approximate the present one. That's the most reasonable thing to do for planning purposes. We also looked at Area 2, which also comes from the Montgomery attendance area. There are 92 students in that area, so it means that we are removing nearly 300 youngsters from the Montgomery attendance area. We know from our past experience that that is the most rapidly growing area. We know from the most recent Economy League study that would indicate that probably 1 out of every 4 new houses will be built in Montgomery Township. That has implications for the Montgomery School. It has some implications for the Bridle Path School. It has some implications under this plan for the Glen North School as well. Area 3 means that 156 youngsters who currently attend the NAP school would go to Bridle Path. I think it's fairly clear when you look at the approximate location to Bridle Path why the task force would look at that area. Area 4 contains 82 youngsters. Prior to 1991, that area attended the Montgomery School. In 1991, we changed that to the Glen North School, and we are now proposing that go to the Bridle Path School again for 2 basic reasons. First, it's very close to the Bridle Path School. It's a logical move. Second, we need to reduce the number of students in the Glen North School, and we are doing that in several ways. This is the first of those moves. It is necessary to say that there are still 30 youngsters in that particular section that were affected in 1991. Those youngsters are now in grades 3, 4, and 5. Next year they will be in 4, 5, and 6. So it's important to recognize that 30 youngsters would have been at Montgomery and then moved on to the Gwynn North School, and now in fact would be asked to move to the Bridle Path School. That's the significance of the shape. So that's 30 of the 82 that currently reside. Others that were involved in that move in 1991 have passed on into the secondary schools. Some have moved away in the meantime as well. I didn't mean they passed on, I think I said they passed on.
Yes.
Pass through the system. The elementary
You understood. So that the fifth area is currently part of the cult attendance area. There are 75 youngsters in that area, and we would propose to bring them also to the Bridle Path School. So if you refer to page 4 in the packet, you see a chart which I will refer to several times, but what that does, it gives us approximately 659, 660 youngsters. We think that is a reasonable number of students in that building. It can hold more than that, and I will later talk about the capacities and what we have yet to grow in that particular building. Item 6 is the small area. It's the Montgomery Commons Shopping Center, and there's some townhouses. We would propose to change that from that to the Gwynn North School. It involves 7 youngsters. If we then go to number 7, I just indicated that we took a significant portion of the NAP attendance area. Roughly 1/3 of the youngsters currently in that building will go to Bridle Path. If we do not address that situation, it means that the NAP school would be seriously underutilized. And we propose to deal with that by moving Area 7 from Oak Park. There are 89 youngsters in that area. We would not further than alter the CULP attendance area, nor would we alter the Oak Park attendance area to the south. We will do a little bit more with that in the north. There is a very small area, Huntington Lane, which has been a part of the CULP attendance area for probably 30 years or more. This is the first year we believe there are no children living there. This is a good time to straighten that out. And that's all that is. I've waited for that for a long time. It doesn't make sense because the children either have to be bused to the CULP school, or they risk running across the road because they don't wait for the bus in years when we've had them. And we do not think that's a desirable situation. It's very, I'm sorry?
Across Cow Path?
Yes, ma'am. And this is an opportunity, an ideal time, we think, to correct a potential problem.
Great.
I'd like then to move on to Area 8. I indicated before that we wanted to reduce enrollment somewhat by taking Area 4 out of the Gwynn North attendance area. And Area 8 means that there are 87 youngsters that would be transferred from the Gwynn North School to Winnick Square School. What that does, it means that we in fact can accommodate slightly less than 500 youngsters in the Gwynn North School, and we gain the room spaces that we need to accommodate grade 6. It also does free up some additional areas which have been needed there for many years. Area 9 proposes moving 64 students from the North Wales School also to the Winnick Square School. And the rationale behind that is that we again need that room space to accommodate grade 6. That would bring the North Wales building to about 495 youngsters. And as I will talk about in greater detail, you can see the plan to accommodate all the programs that we need to deal with in that building. I mentioned earlier that this sort of has a domino effect, and I think you've already seen that to some degree in what I'm presenting at the moment. If you then look at the Walton Farm attendance area for a minute, I want to skip some of those areas and come back to them in a moment because I think it's more logical. If you look at the location of Walton Farm, you see that Area 16 surrounds it. That area currently attends school at Inglewood. There are 318 children in that area. That is 2/3 of the current Inglewood population. Clearly, if we evacuate that many children from Inglewood, it means the Inglewood attendance area presently is very, very small. We would have relatively few youngsters there. And proximity, obviously, in Area 16 is the issue. As we do that, we then also need to look at Area 17, take some pressures off of the Hatfield School. Area 17 proposes to move 70 youngsters from Hatfield to Walton Farm. Again, it's contiguous territory, it's proximate. We also propose to take 18 more out of the Hatfield, to take Area 18, which is 59 more students from Hatfield, and add them to Walton Farm. That would bring the Hatfield School to 673. Still a significant number.
Charlie, what about 19?
And Area 19, Donna, is coming from Oak Park. There are 58 youngsters there. So if you take that Area 19 from Oak Park, and you take with 58 youngsters, and you take Area 7 from Oak Park with 89, it does what we need to do to provide space at Oak Park for 6th grade, and it gives us approximately 485. I say approximately again and again because there's a margin of error in this data, I will tell you up front, somewhere between 1% and 2%. When you do this with the computer, the computer is never quite where we are because you process registrations and withdrawals. And they roll that over. They don't roll that over every day. So it is off. But I would suggest to you that 1 or 2%, given the number of classrooms and sites that we operate, it's not significant as a planning document. But if anyone were to go across these columns, they will not always add up precisely to the number.
Charlie, a point of clarification on between Oak Park and Inglewood. Welsh Road is the divider there, right? I don't think the maps show that.
It is the dividing line, right?
Is yours heavy there or light?
What I then want to do is also talk about Area 15, which currently goes to the Nash School. That's a lot of territory. There are only 5 children that are there. In Area 15. And the same is true in Area 14. There are only 7 youngsters there. That area was transferred from Inglewood in 1991, and of that 7, 5 were transferred in 1991.
Charlie, some of these larger areas where there seems to be few kids coming out, is there a considerable density of private school students in those neighborhoods, or is there an
It's
explanation?
sparsely populated, and in one case, in Area 15, it's the Turnpike, and it's that retirement community that's there, Donna.
All right, thank you.
Having done that now, I'd like to turn my attention to the remainder of the Inglewood attendance area because it relates to Inglewood and Gwynedd Square. We find it necessary at this point to recommend that areas 10, 11, 12, and 13, which are currently part of the Gwynedd Square attendance area, move to the Inglewood area. Because recall that I said we were taking 318 youngsters out of it. It would be seriously underutilized. So we looked at all of the contiguous areas and said, from a geographical and numbers standpoint, First, what makes sense? This seemed to the task force to make a great deal of sense, despite the fact that it does involve moving those youngsters again. And I want to point out that in Area 10, there are a total of 61 youngsters. 17 of those were involved in the move in 1991 from the Gwynnor attendance area to Gwinnett Square. Area 11 contains 26 youngsters, and 19 of those were involved in the move from York Avenue in 1991. Area 12 contains 33 children, 10 of whom were involved in the move in 1991 from Inglewood. And Area 13 contains 74 students, 26 of whom were involved in the move from Nash in 1991.
Kelly, do you have the grade levels of these?
Yes, I do. May I suggest that if we could do the whole
Yes.
thing,
Yeah.
it might expedite it, and I'll be more than willing to answer all your questions. We know that this is probably going to make some people unhappy. Not probably, we know that there are some people who are unhappy about that. I've received a number of letters, phone calls, have spoken to several people, have conducted a few conferences over the matter. I think it's very important for the board and the community to keep in mind that the reason we built the Gwinnett Square School and opened it in 1991 is because we had serious problems in the northern end of the school district. We had problems at Nash, we had problems at Inglewood, we had problems at York, we had some problems at Gwynnor, North Wales, and other places. We had to move those students at that time to keep class sizes reasonable. And we believe that class size was a primary value of parents in this community. Unfortunately, we have continued to grow. And because we have grown, we have found it necessary to build 2 new schools, to reorganize the school district to handle it, and clearly that necessitates another move. If we had Walton Farm at that time, we would probably have done what we're looking at now in the first place. But the reality of it is, we had no idea in 1991 that there was going to be a Walton Farm. And so I think that is what has led us to this. So basically, that is the attendance area proposal. If you would look at the chart on page 4, I would ask everyone to keep in mind that this is a planning document. This numbers on this page change by the day, and they will continue to change until next September. We will have somewhat different numbers of students in all probability for a variety of reasons, move-ins, move-outs, whether this plan is finally the one that's adopted. But what we did, we took the total number of students at any grade level, and if I might just use the Bridle Path School as an example, we don't know what the kindergarten is going to be, so we made the assumption, as we traditionally do, that it will be the same as first grade, or as this year's kindergarten. So that would be 97 as we pulled all that together. It looks as though there are 97 first graders. We used the class size guidelines of not more than 25 for K through 3. And that second column in every case represents the number of classrooms it will take to house this population. When we get to grades 4, 5, and 6, the upper limit of the class size guidelines suggests 28, so we have used that number to determine the number of sections. The next line down talks about a number of special ed classes that we have across the district. They are housed in certain specific schools, but they serve the entire district. I think the board is well aware that we do not have enough children in any of those categories to have a class in each building, so we pool those for the system as a whole. But they do require room space. We then came up with the total number of rooms and students that this plan proposes be housed in every building. We also know that we have learning skills part-time programs. When you see at the case of Bridle Path, half there and half after gifted, as you will see for Gwinnett Square and Walton, it simply means that we built some classrooms there and new facilities with movable walls. That's a typical 850, I think I'm right about that, square foot classroom, Art. And we anticipated that these are classes that have a limited number of youngsters, so it seemed to make sense to be able to divide those spaces, and that's what that means. In cases at Bridle Path, there would be an art room and a music room under this proposal. That would remain so only as long as we can adequately house the K-6 population, the learning skills population, the gifted. If it requires the creation of another section or two, then we would do what we have historically done. Those are our safety valves. Those are our cushions. Those rooms could be withdrawn. As you look across to other schools, you will see clearly that it was not possible to provide an art and a music room in every building. In the case where you see under Hatfield that the learning skills program and gifted program, there's a 0 in SEM, it means that we are not devoting a full-size classroom to that, but there are smaller seminar spaces that will adequately serve those needs. The net result of all that is, in the second to last column, you see the classrooms that are needed under this plan, and you will then see in the last line the classrooms that are available. And I think it is interesting to note that we are only going to have 2 classrooms in the entire system next year that will not be used. One will be at Bridle Path, the other would be at Walton Farm, and if I were a betting man, I would say by the time we get there, we will use them for something. It may very well be that by the time we get to this, we will have to move some of these other programs that are movable, such as the pre-first grade program. It houses children for 1 year from all over the system. If we were pressed, it may or may not be at the Walton Farm School because we can move that interchangeably. If you go back and look at the total numbers of students, keep in mind that we indicated one of the things we wanted to do was to allow for future growth. We do not want to go through this process again and again and again. I would like to say that we would not go through this ever. Realistically, that's a commitment I don't think any of us would ever make. And I would say very clearly to this community, there can never be a promise, because you only promise if you're absolutely sure that you can deliver. We can't say that this will never happen again. The question of how many youngsters can you put in a school very frequently arises, and it's a reasonable question. The answer is really dependent upon how one uses the rooms that are in a school. And if I could use the column labeled Gwynn North as an example, what that means is that for every classroom that you devote to primary students K-3, you can put up to 25 children in it according to our guidelines. For every classroom that you devote to 4, 5, and 6 under our guidelines, you can put 28 in it. If I use those numbers in the Gwynn North School, I could say that in those 2 rooms that are devoted to kindergarten, we could in fact house 20 more youngsters, because each kindergarten serves 25 in the morning, 25 in the afternoon. For first grade with 80, we can also serve 20 additional students. In second grade, we can serve 13 more to get us to 75, which is the 3 full sections. In fourth grade, we could serve 27 more youngsters to get us to 84, which is 3 times the 28. The same thing is true in grade 5. We can serve 25 more, and we could serve 16 more in grade 6. What all this means is that, given that breakdown of classes, given the emotional support classes that are there, we could serve, in addition to the 496 that will be there, we could serve 132 more if every seat in every room were filled. So that I think you can see, if another year we took out the special ed classes and made those 2 4th grades or 2 5th grades, that would change that capacity number. As it would change if there were more intermediate classes one year and fewer primary. It's a floating number, and I know sometimes the community gets a little bit concerned because in different years we say the buildings can hold different numbers of children, but that's the reality of it. It really does depend on how you use the building. If one were to use that system and go across, you would see that the difference between the numbers that we project to be there and the numbers that you could put there ranges from about 79%, about 73% to about 88, 89% in different schools as you go across. And what that suggests to us is that we can provide for future growth under this plan. We have allowed for more space in some schools than in others, where we could. And we did that in the schools that serve any part of Montgomery Township because we know that 1 in 4 future homes will be in that township. We also made allowances in some of the schools in the northern end of the system because the Economy League studies, the board would indicate that there will be growth to come in Tillmanson Township. It's not perfect, but that was our effort to try to address that particular problem. If one looks at art and music rooms, it further impacts on the capacity for any given building. Clearly, the Gwynn North School is projected to have an art and music room. If we were to convert those to classrooms for primary grades, that's 50 more youngsters. And we have done that. If it were 2 intermediate grade classes, it goes up slightly, it's 56. So that I think if there's anyone who's interested in where is the future growth and how do you come up with the capacity, I thought it was necessary to run you through that exercise that explains it depends on how you use the rooms. I think that probably covers all that we need to say about the plan, and I would be happy, Pat, to answer the board's questions.
Well, basically, I think we're going to use the same rules for the board as we used for the audience of citizens. This was a presentation. Moving 1,500 children is a lot to digest. I suggest that the board go over this. If they have any questions, to call Judy or Mr. Kepper. And we have several more meetings. Hi. Thank you. As you can see, it is. We were not underestimating. We say this is a massive realignment. It is. Okay. Item number 3 on our curriculum is the high school program of study changes. And I believe Mr. Bedimer.
John, you better give us a chance to refold the maps.
This will be our Bible for the next.
Yeah, Dad. I would have complimented in public, can you not tell us to shut up? We could have commented and not asked questions.
You got it.
She wanted to jump into the gun. That's why she played
Dick, she did that because you pulled out your statistics.
Actually, if you look at the areas square foot wise or square miles wise, the bigger schools are taking in the bigger areas. And it makes a lot of sense to do that.
Sounds very military.
Now that we've all regrouped, okay. Don, are we ready for our high school program of studies? You know, we have some tech prep courses and Couple of upgrades here.
Okay, let's start on the next
I have no
one.
maps for you to open or to share with you, but I do have a graph, a chart in the packet. For board members, it's two separate sheets. For those of you in the audience, there is a sheet that describes the high school program of studies. In the back of that, there are two charts that I'll be referring to as I progress through my presentation tonight. There's two topics that I want to discuss with you. First of all, I'd like to present an overview of our secondary instructional program for the purpose of giving you a perspective on the offerings we have in grades 7 through 12. And then second, to review the changes to the 1994-95 high school program of studies. Typically this time of the year I present secondary program of study changes for your review. But because we are still involved in our grade reorganization process, changes to middle school, junior high program of studies will be discussed in November. So we'll focus on the high school. And as I mentioned first, an overview on our instructional programs in the secondary schools. Just to briefly do this, I'd like to point out that our instructional programs in the secondary schools are designed to provide instruction that addresses really two aspects. First of all, the various ability levels of our students, and secondly, the goals and interests that students have along with their parents as they make decisions about course selections as they move through the grades. As far as ability levels are concerned, we accommodate the ability levels of our students by providing courses in special education, gifted, and of course we challenge all the other students at different course levels in many subjects. In order to meet the wide variety of goals and interests that students have as they progress through the secondary school years, we provide an increasingly wide variety of course offerings from which students can choose. Eventually, as students move through high school years, the opportunities for choice increase as they move through the grades. And at this point, I'd like to refer you to the graph that says at the top, a comparison of secondary programs by grade level. You can all find that. It will take a little bit of explanation in order for you to understand the information that I have here. If you look on the left-hand side of the graph, you'll see that it increases from 0 to 48. 48 represents the total number of instructional periods, or total number of periods that would exist in an 8-period day, which we have in our middle, junior, and senior high, and that reflecting our 6-day cycle that we use to schedule students. Instead of a 5-day week, we use a 6-day cycle, and any of you who have secondary age students know about A, B, C, D, E, or F day. So if you multiply 6-day cycle times 8 periods, there are 48 available periods in each grade level. Now 6 of those meet the basic need of lunch. So you can see at the very top of the chart, if you look down the right-hand side, I'll explain the terms that are used there. 6 of those periods from the space 42 through 48 represent lunch periods. The remaining 42 periods in the cycle refer to instructional time. And that instructional time is divided into 3 categories. The categories in the gray shaded area are periods of required subjects. In the diagonal line section, required periods of elective subjects. And at the top, the dark black area are for pure electives or study halls. As you look across the grades, and I'll talk about each grade in a moment, you can see that there are gradual changes as students move through the system. The 7th grade program consists almost exclusively of periods of required subjects. Your English, science, social studies, math, and developmental reading are the requirements as far as major subjects are concerned, but there also are exploratory programs in physical and other requirements in physical education, health, art, practical arts, which are home ec and tech ed or industrial arts as it's been formerly known, and computer literacy. The only diagonal space in the 7th grade years is devoted to the only choices that 7th grade students have, and that is whether they want to take band, chorus, orchestra, or general music. So as you can see, 7th grade is very structured. As students move into the junior high school, there's a little bit more opportunity for electives to take place. However, 30 of their periods are required for their major subjects of English, social studies, science, and math, and in addition, physical education, health, and related fine arts are also required of 8th to 9th graders. There remains then 8 periods available in the student's schedule for them to make some choices. Take an additional major subject, each major subject taking up 6 periods of the instructional cycle, and other elective opportunities. You'll notice across the top, the electives or study halls are pure electives that students can make decisions about with their parents to either take additional credits or additional courses, or in some cases study halls. And we do have a minimum standard requirement for all students in grades 8 through 12, and that is that everyone must select at least 38 instructional periods of instruction every single year. So the darkened area represents the difference between 38, which would be the required component, and elective opportunities. Many of our students take a full course load of 42 periods, but there are opportunities there for minor elective choices or for study halls. That number of minimum instructional periods, by the way, has increased in the past years. In fact, we've gradually increased it probably over the past 10 years. We originally required a minimum of 36, and we've raised that, I believe, in 1990 to 38. So that means that we have fewer students in study halls and more students in instructional class time. You'll notice that 8th and 9th grade are essentially the same. However, in 9th grade is the beginning of the secondary student's career in which they need to earn credits towards graduation. Our graduation requirements expect that students will earn a minimum of 21 credits over the period from grade 9 through grade 12. So we do assign credits to all the courses from grades 9 through 12, and students must earn them in the major disciplines and physical education, health, and arts and humanities. There are also additional electives that students can choose. Once they move into the high school, the number of elective opportunities increases slightly in grades 10 and 11, but essentially the number of required courses is about the same. And finally, in 12th grade, they have met most of the required subjects, and there's a lot more elective opportunities. The diagonal line section in grade 12 represents roughly 24 periods of instruction, which is the equivalent of many more major subjects. We require that all seniors take English and social studies, physical education, that's represented in the gray area. The diagonal section allows for at least 3 additional major subjects from which they can choose in our variety of opportunities that exist. I think at this point, if you think of this graph as a representation of change and progress regarding opportunities for selection, that's one of the things that we certainly wanted to portray in the graph that's here for you to look at. There is a second chart in your pack. For those of you in the audience, it's simply on the back of the paper that you have. And for the board, there's a separate sheet that's headed Selected Department Enrollments. Because we have such a wide variety of ability levels and goals, students and parents select courses based on future plans and interests. As an example of how ability levels and goals are addressed, I wanted to show you some selected departments, those departments that are not typically considered academic in nature, but are opportunities and programs that we have at our high school that students can take advantage of. The section in the diagonal line portion of the previous graph really is a period of, this represents some of the opportunities that students have to select courses in those sections. The 8 departments that I've listed there, I've chosen, as I mentioned, because in science and in math and English and social studies, essentially 100% of our population are taking courses there. However, in these departments, where the requirements don't exist regarding the opportunities or the courses that they must take, the numbers are somewhat different. But I found that looking at enrollment patterns over the years, and in particular 93, 94, that the numbers are somewhat interesting. For example, you can see in the middle column the number of students who elect courses in the art department is about 800 students. This really represents about 35% of our student body electing art courses. In business education, foreign language, you can also get a sense of the numbers of students who elect courses in these programs. You can also see the breakdown for the remainder of the courses here, including technology ed, which is the new term that we use for industrial arts, formerly industrial arts. Our work study and career study programs that are primarily opportunities for 11th and 12th graders, and our VOTEC program, which is available for students in grades 10 through 12. So that represents a little bit of a picture regarding the secondary programs, and at this point I'd like to focus then on the program of studies for the high school. If you have questions after I've gone through the rest of the piece, we can talk about the overview and program of studies and plans. Before I get into the actual course changes that are being recommended for next year, I wanted to talk a little bit about an initiative that many of the board members are familiar with, but I felt would be helpful to expand upon a little bit as we consider the addition of courses in a new program that we're in the process of developing and operating. There's been many changes recently at North Montco, our vocational technical school. Some of those changes have related to the cluster concept that many board members are familiar with, and also the North Montco is involved in the technical preparation initiative as we are as well. In fact, we're working very closely with North Montco in the development of the Tech Prep initiative. And I want to talk a little bit about Tech Prep because the majority of our changes, the most significant ones, are related to that program. At different times during this recent year, Ms. Mengel and Bill Halberstadt and Mr. Redcamp have talked about some of the improvements that have been made at North Montco. And of course, we at North Penn High School are working together with the faculty at North Montco to bring forth the Tech Prep program that is in your packet and described there. There are about 60% of our high school students that are pursuing a 4-year college prep curriculum. Another 12% are being trained in vocational technical programs at North Montco. That leaves about 28% of our students which represents about 600 students in grades 10 through 12 that earn credits towards a diploma, but really don't have a very specific set of post-graduation plans or goals. And that number is somewhat alarming. The Tech Prep program, the Tech Prep initiatives that are going on not only in North Penn but across Pennsylvania and even much of the country is a program that's designed to address the needs of that population. Tech Prep is a career preparation program, and at the same time it represents a course of study or a sequence of courses that are designed to meet the needs for high school graduates to have a more technically oriented set of skills and to help prepare those students for advanced associate degrees in community colleges or technical schools, and even in some cases to give them opportunities to move into four-year programs down the road. However, we're very concerned about this particular population, and along with North Monco and the consortium of Montgomery County Community College, Penn State Ogon's campus, we are working towards developing programs that will enable our students to be prepared to enter technical training, further technical training after high school, generally in two-year programs. I have listed in the packet some of the goals of the Tech Prep initiative. Obviously, in order for students to go on to post-secondary training, there needs to be improved academic skills in math, English, and science. We feel that we will be addressing that. We will increase, hopefully, the number of graduates who go on to post-secondary training, and we hope that this is a better direction to take to prepare students for the workforce that exists and that probably we don't prepare them well enough for at the moment. Now, some things have been happening at North Penn. At the high school, we have offered, for the past 4 years, a course called Principles of Technology, and also in our Technology Ed department, and also a course called Applied Economics, which is a business elective opportunity. In those two courses, we now attract about 150 students. In addition to those course offerings, we also have had a team of teachers at the high school who've been working with a selected group of vocational and as in the past known as general students in grades 10 through 12. We have also been involved in planning the initiative and program with staff members from North Monco. The things that we have been doing are really the starting stages in an ultimate hope to have a tech prep program that will attract and accommodate all of our students that are in this 28 to 30%. As far as 1994-95 is concerned, we'll really be recommending courses that will continue our movement towards a tech prep program. There is an overall site team that consists of parents, business leaders, high school and junior high school administrators, teachers, and counselors that are all working together to help define this program and to develop it to its fullest potential. Ultimately, we envision that Tech Prep will be a program that may accommodate students actually from grades 8 through 12 and will develop a sequence of applied courses that will integrate vocational subjects in all of these grade areas. I would suspect that we will have developed the very near future, within a year or so, a sequence of courses that students will take as early as 8th grade, carry all through their high school years, that prepares them for additional training and preparation in technical skill areas once they leave high school. So in order to begin that, our recommendations for the program of studies changes represent 3 new tech prep courses that I'll talk to you about briefly, 2 in the science department and 1 in technology ed. So if you can look at your green sheet in the section identified as courses to be added, Roman numeral 1, there are 2 science courses that we're introducing, applied biology and applied chemistry. The term applied, incidentally, is a term that's very common to tech prep courses, and it really refers to a practical application of skills that lead to further technical training, and the concepts of practical application are the ones that are most important and reflected here in these 2 courses. They're offered at level 4.0. They are 1-credit courses that would be available to these students. You can see there the description and the rationale for each of these 2. On the second page, the third course of the tech prep nature is a follow-up or second level course in Principles of Technology. Principles of Technology is an applied physics course I mentioned earlier, a course that deals with concepts that are listed there in the area of physics, but in applied sense, they're most appropriate for students who could pursue technical careers and further technical training. We feel that there is certainly enough information to be taught and enough interest to justify the addition of a second level of this course. We have about 55 students taking it in this level. We have had the first level of the course for about 4 years. These three courses then represent the ground floor of the eventual development of a sequence of courses for tech prep. The fourth new course that we're proposing for next year grew from the recommendations of the gifted task force that were presented to the board last June. The course listed on page 2, entitled Interdisciplinary English/Social Studies, is a 2-credit course that really integrates the concepts that are taught in 10th grade English and 10th grade Social Studies. All of the students who would take this course would be responsible for the full 10th grade English curriculum and the full World Cultures Social Studies program for 10th grade. And in addition to that, there would be an interdisciplinary component where students would study world literature along with world cultures as part of the interdisciplinary component. This recommendation will replace what is known as the resource course in 10th grade, and you'll see that a little bit down below as a course that's being deleted. The second category represents course title changes. The first two of those are changes that result from our effort to move away from what we typically call general courses towards applied courses, using those practical skill applications that I talked about earlier. Our 2 general math courses changing from that title to applied math is the reason for that. The third title change is really an attempt to avoid some confusion. Applied ecology is a course offering in our science department. We feel a better description is environmental science, and this particular course called applied ecology is not intended as a tech prep course. So we feel the title change is necessary to avoid some confusion. It also gives a better description of the course. The third category are courses to be dropped. There are 2 courses in the art department that are dropping because of insufficient enrollment. In April of each year, we bring to you the course selections in different courses and oftentimes recommend that a course not be offered because of under-enrollment. If that occurs for too long a period of time, we eventually drop it from the offerings which are in the program. So what we're recommending here is that these 2 be dropped from the program of studies rather than just for the year. The resource class, of course, as I mentioned, is dropped because of the replacement by the interdisciplinary program up above. On the back of the last page, the 4th category, these represent levels to be added and changed. As you know, we have courses offered at 3 different levels, 4.0, 5.0, and 6.0 at the high school. We have 2 courses in the business department. They are both semester courses. Up to this point, they have been offered only at the 4.0 level. We'd like to increase the opportunity and challenge to these courses by creating sections also at the 5.0 level. In the social studies program that was implemented for the first time this year, our original intent was just to offer it at those first 2 levels, 4.0 and 5.0. We now feel that since everyone is required to select offerings in these semester courses, that we need to be able to challenge at all 3 levels, so we want to extend that to level 6 as well. The existing introductory Principles of Technology course exists at level 5. To accommodate all those students in applied courses, we want to also offer that at the 4.0 level. So these represent the changes that we're proposing for 94-95. We're very excited about the Tech Prep program. Many members of the high school staff have been working very hard in planning and preparing for this. We're anxious to involve the community and members of the junior high school staff and parents in helping to define this program as it continues to evolve. I would suspect over the next couple of years you'll see additional Tech Prep initiatives and courses come forth as our program of studies grows and changes. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions or hear your comments.
Don, I have a couple of questions. On the applied biology, you've got a level 4. Currently, there's a biology 1 that's at a level 4.
Right.
Would that be replacing that biology?
Not entirely. We would expect that a few sections of applied biology would occur this coming year, but ultimately we would expect that applied courses will replace the general course at the 4.0 level. I don't anticipate that this first year, but as the program grows in popularity and a course sequence develops, that we expect that might replace it.
They have to take biology in 10th grade.
That's correct.
That's a requirement.
Right.
Why not replace it completely
Well,
with this applied biology? I mean, you've got them already doing, so if you've got them in biology 1, the children who would be taking it in 10th grade, who are coming in, this is their course. The applied biology is the 4.0 level, and then the other two would be the 5 and the 6 level, instead of offering both of them. I don't see,
we just feel that the whole process, moving towards a Tech Prep curriculum, is something that will take some time and something that will grow. We would like it to grow through interest and explanation and communication about the programs and the purposes of it down the road. So at this point, for this coming year, we'd like to introduce it just as at this level, continue to offer the other general biology at 4.0, but ultimately replacing it down the road. At least I think that's the goal of our group.
If we do a good job with counselors explaining the applied biology course, you'll see in the spring through our enrollment pattern that we will be reducing the numbers of sections of general biology, that after maybe a year or so under our belt with applied biology, that communication is out there amongst the parents as well, and people begin to self-select applied biology, which we think has much more relevancy than the
I just think you're adding a
traditional
level, and really you should be revamping that 4.0 level to this applied biology level, because those are the children that you're going to be targeting. And we had discussed this when we had talked about children who normally take a 4.0 level, that they're really not challenged. If you offer them the 4.0 level, biology 1, and then the applied biology, they may just opt to take the easier one instead of the applied one, and they're not getting that challenge to the applied biology. So the replacement part of it, gives them the challenge for the applied part of it.
We're not necessarily indicating that one is easier than the other. Applied biology is a different approach and a different strategy.
But you're targeting you're targeting children in the same level, and I think that level you should have them in the applied biology and say, okay, this is the level that you have, instead of offering the biology 1. I would just get rid of that and just make it the applied biology. It's a perfect course for the children who are going to be in that course.
We feel strongly enough about applied biology and the applied program in technical prep that we could do that. It's going to take some work to get it off the ground, but we think we can do that and make it a good, viable program. We would hope that even if we didn't eliminate general biology, that within a few years our students would be self-selecting the applied biology. You're just accelerating it by elimination of the general biology.
Well, it's my understanding with this being an initiative, you're trying to start with X number of students as opposed to the entire category or the entire level that you're talking about, that you're looking at so many students in which to test this or to try this out on.
This would force the issue a lot quicker.
Well, the thing is that when we went to any of the seminars that we went to, we were targeting the children who are at the 4.0 level. And so by replacing it, we're giving them a more comprehensive 4.0 level so that they can use it in their applied. So you're targeting the same amount of children. You're just offering one course. And you're saying, this is what we're offering. And you'll find, without the two of them being offered, by forcing them to take, not forcing them, but by saying that you've got the applied biology one, you're saying to the children, we're offering you, a different perspective of it, and the confusion would be less there also. I would imagine that everyone who's taking the 4.0 would be happy to take the applied.
Well, there's another component to that, and that is preparing our teachers to using these new strategies. Our attempt at this point is to prepare a certain group of the department to teach the course, and ultimately have all folks trained in these different strategies.
Except we're not going to turn students away from applied biology.
Yeah,
If we have 200 sign up for applied biology, then we're going to work with those teachers to have enough sections for all 200. We're not going to say we don't have the teachers trained and therefore you take general biology next year instead of applied.
I just think we shouldn't have both.
We're committed to this, and we really believe that this is a better way for them to learn, that'll prepare them better for when they leave school. Then let's go with it and not go half-hearted.
Exactly.
We'll go for it then. That's the feeling.
A couple of other.
I mean, that ties into all the other
Right.
program of studies that we're doing for that group of targeted children. So let's not go halfway.
Several of you indicated a few years ago.
Be there.
I think the
Right, Dr. Bond?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I think the question is, are we gonna be reliably ready to go, are we gonna be reliably ready next September to drop the 4.0 and replace it completely?
We'll get ready.
We have a whole year.
If we can't be ready in 10 months, we'll never be ready.
Well, they'll have to get
We'll
rid
be
of
ready.
it.
Right, Dr. Bond?
Roll your own.
Are there any other board questions?
There's still gonna be
I
an
have some more
amiibo in
questions.
both the
A
processes.
couple more. Okay. Well, that was only one. This is my second one. Thank you, Tom. On the advanced principle of technology, that's a level 5, whereas the principle of technology, the regular one, you're recommending to do a 4 and a 5.
Correct.
What happens with the 4 children, the ones who are in the 4 level and want to go to the higher level, now they're going to a whole other, challenging or whatever, expense.
That's another good question.
If I understand your question, the question is what happens in advanced principles of technology in terms of the level?
Well, you're recommending to take principle of technology from a level 5 and expand it to a 4 and a 5. 4 being challenging, 5 being more challenging, if I read my program studies correctly. But now you're offering advanced principles of technology, and that's a more challenging. So you have the students who may have taken the principle of technology in a challenging level, wanting to go to the advanced principles of technology, but the only thing that's offered to them is a more challenging level.
No, it's the same.
It's the same, it went from a 5 to a 4 and 5.
The first year.
When we come back next year will be the first year that we have 4. The following year will be the advanced 4.
Okay.
Next year.
So for the first year, you're talking about the students who are now in principle of technology being
They're
as
all
a
fives.
as a
Nobody could have taken
prerequisite.
the course you're talking about.
It's 5
Nobody's
to
there to take
5.
it.
Okay, fine.
Next year, there'll be a 4, but there won't be an advanced 4.
And that would also be dependent on the number of students that we attract to the courses.
May or may not need this.
And last one, Tom, I have. On the general math and the general math 2, you're changing the title to applied math and applied math 2. Have the courses changed to reflect applied math?
That should have been done at an earlier date because the actual courses changed away from general math, but we never changed the title. For anybody to come along and read those as general math, and for the last couple of years or so, that's been a disservice to continue to call them general math.
Right, it's really not the title, it's the best descriptor,
Okay.
plus now it fits because they're having.
So it's all
applied
part
concepts.
of the tech prep with the applied math, the applied science, and the advanced, the principles of technology and all.
General math has really evolved from teaching theory and growing practice to more practical application kinds of things over the years. And certainly a better descriptor is a plan.
Can I come back to technology just for a moment to make a point? You'll see in the description that it's available as a science credit, the state. In effect, what we've been able to do with this, if we can encourage our students to take applied biology, applied chemistry, principles of technology, and advanced principles of technology, we've built in for the non-college bound student an opportunity for science in every year of their high school experience. That, if you read the course description for applied principles of technology, and you took that title out of there, it sounds like an applied physics course, but we don't want to scare our non-college bound students away from it by calling it applied physics, because even college bound students kind of shudder a little bit when you talk about physics courses. So we're kind of sneaking in the back door with an applied physics course there.
Good stuff. I think that we need to think of tech prep not as just for non-college bound students.
Right.
Because there are a number of students who will be taking tech prep because that's where their interest is. They will also be preparing themselves for, I don't want any misunderstanding.
Good clarification. Thank you.
Does this put an
But
end
there's
to the
also-
general track, as we have known it for 20-some years?
We ultimately see us having two tracks, those students who are preparing for four-year post-college plans, and those people, the remainder in a tech prep track that may lead them into vocational school.
Right.
Or through a track at the high school that may take them to a technical or community college.
See, this
You
is-
still have, though, what we still have to work on, I believe, and Dr. Vaughn and Juan can correct me, but to get the full tech prep program in place, we really need to look at some of the general English classes, and they need to move to applied communications courses. I
See,
believe
this is-
that's still on the
We
plate.
anticipate that happening next year, or the following year.
It's more than just math and science.
That's right.
Well, we've made headway.
It's a whole
This is-
curriculum.
We're getting there, maybe another year.
You don't do the whole elephant, you start with the
We see that
great
as people prepare for certain future technical training, that they may, part of the sequence may include specific courses in business, or specific technology computer courses, prepare them for a particular track. In other words, as they move through the years from grades 8, 9, all the way up, the curriculum would become more specific in other words, moving from general course preparation into more specific training once they get to the high school, and leading them into some training beyond that.
See, this is a passionate issue for me. So often issues come up for all the board members here that they grasp onto more than others, and this one has always bothered me. The general track bothered me as a student here 20 years ago, and it bothers me now. To me, the general kids, it's just adolescent daycare at the taxpayer expense. And, when you look at the $7,200 a year we spend per child,
I have to take exception to that.
No,
That is the most
wait a
outrageous
minute.
thing I've ever heard.
I just think it's an academic wasteland for general. We spend $7,200 a student, and we've gotten kids into Ivy League schools, and then $7,200 for another child for them to graduate general. General what? I think it's a real disservice, and I appreciate Bon and Venema going forward and articulating tech prep with the VOTEC and with the teaching faculty, and we shouldn't be satisfied graduating kids general. That has to end. It has been an academic wasteland. I saw it as a student, and I see it now as a board, as being on the board. Terry was there.
Several of you about a year ago attended the session with Dr. Jean Bottoms,
That's
who
right.
talked about general track students. Just coincidentally, Dr. Bottoms is going to be at the high school addressing our faculty this Thursday.
We'll be
So,
And Dr. Bottoms had said that the only reason there are general track children is because they go unchallenged.
That's right.
And we've gone to the nth degree for gifted students, and we've gone to the nth degree for all sorts of types of students.
You
And
have
I
to
just seen
realize
these
that is
kids
mandated
laying
by
in
law,
wait.
though. That
Pardon
is
me?
mandated by law for the gifted. Okay.
And it's any less a mandate to educate the kids that chose
No,
to be
no.
general all these years for no reason?
Well,
That's right, for the same amount of money. And it has to end. The general has to end, and we have to do more than we've done ever before. And we don't have the list here of all the people on the tech prep task force. And Don, if you'd make that available to all the members of the board, I'd appreciate that. We've got some great parents and teachers and administrators, and people on that task force that I think are really gonna do a job, I really do. And,
It's exciting, it really is.
it is, and I can't wait for it to get moving.
There's one of the, there's going to be a need
Yeah.
when you get involved in tech prep and get placing teachers in this. There's going to be a resource need that you need to be aware of, because to do what we're talking about is going to require in servicing, it may require some additional staffing, it's going to require some additional materials and supplies and text. There's going to be a price tag to this.
They're always,
Yeah, I don't mind buying the additional supplies. I did have a question on this overall, on the overall changes. What's the net effect on the staff?
We don't anticipate any additional staff
From that.
reflected from this particular piece here.
Okay.
If in fact, we have a significant, if all of our 10th graders took applied biology that they need to, if all, when we get to a tech prep and we do it interdisciplinary, the way we'd like to do it, the way we're doing it now, it's going to require some planning time that those teachers don't currently have in their schedule. And that's where the cost is going to come in. And we have a significant number of our teachers now that are teaching that 6th period that are going to need that to do some planning if in fact we do this full tip.
But you're also not looking at what our enrollment's gonna be, we're gonna have teachers there. So we're gonna have a whole gambit of how our resources are gonna be for the next school year, so I don't think
For
it's.
the next school year?
No, I think it's,
For
So,
94, 95, I don't anticipate any additional staff
right.
to
we,
do this.
we will
at this point.
not be asking for additional staff at this point. We will do this with existing staff
for this year.
for the upcoming year.
Well, I'm gonna, for as long as I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna support Juan Bon fully and completely through this whole ordeal, and it's nice to spend money on students once in a while instead of bricks and mortar. So I'm gonna support that expense as it comes forward.
I'll write that down.
Great program, great.
Done.
Write it down.
The social
I'm
studies,
passing that
the
vote
3
now.
semester courses, we are adding a 6.0 level. Will they be honors or AP?
Pardon me?
Honors or AP?
They would be honors. We don't have AP programs for those specifically, although we already
Executive
have
government honors.
AP, we already have AP psychology as an offering.
That's a full year.
That's a full year, and an AP government that is available as a semester course.
Yes.
We don't have AP
That's
courses
what-
yet.
I was just wondering what the level, the shading there was, if it's articulated.
Are there any other questions?
I think that concludes finally the curriculum portion as, oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
From the podium.
Ask her to come to the microphone.
Could you come to the microphone? The people can't hear. Over here, please.
Are there going to be any full-year honors level social studies courses?
AP psychology and
And an honors level, not an AP?
AP government, but that's what we have.
So no? Okay.
Could we have your name, excuse me, for our records?
Seema Mehta? Seema Mehta?
Thank you.
are there any other additional comments on the changes in the program of studies from the audience?
If it's the board's pleasure, that would be on the agenda for next Thursday for action.
Nice.
Thank you.
Okay, Art.
Dr. Bennett?
Okay, that's it for curriculum, correct, Pat?
That concludes.
And we'll move on to our last item, which is buildings and grounds. Terry.
Art, can you speak about, how about that?
We have a 2,000-gallon gasoline, unleaded gasoline storage tank that we will be removing at the bus garage. In order to do that, we need to have the engineering services that I'm recommending. We receive quotations, and this is the lowest quotation.
Art, question on that. We're not gonna use it anymore, right? So why can't we just leave it in the ground? Federal, state? Try, I mean, can't we use it for something else?
We used to, well, the problem is.
Like used oil or something?
No, we need to pull it to see if we have contamination right now.
And then, does this 2,800 include taking the soil out around it?
This
if
is only
the
the engineering fee to do that work.
It's just for some guy to tell you it's okay to do
To tell you
Put
it's
the
in-
back in big trouble. environmental
Well,
protection
if it
agency will
leaks,
be
we're
on it.
doing something different than most districts, and many other districts are starting to do it now. We allow for contaminated soil in the base bid, but we work it two ways. We, for an example, at Inglewood, we bid with 500 tons of contaminated soil, but if you have no contaminated soil, they must reimburse at their unit price. So it really causes the contractor to be responsible on their unit price.
Was the excavation of this tank known to the transportation planning, the company that, the consultants there, that's the word I'm looking for.
They were aware
This is part of the-
that we had replaced, this is not part of their report, but I shared with them that we just replaced with the new technology our diesel fuel tank, and that we still had the single wall tank with no leak detection that must come out by January.
And what do we anticipate is the cost of actually pulling the tank?
I would
With no
think the
contaminated
cost will be, without contamination, between $25,000 and $30,000. Now, you're talking about all the fuel lines, the vent lines, the existing pump, and the tank in a very difficult area as it relates to utilities. I mean, that tank is planted in between the electric service and...
I hate to pay it.
It has to come
We
out.
have to.
Drop it.
We don't have any choice.
Well,
Fine.
It's gonna come out,
bite the
right?
bullet, law.
Dick, buy a backhoe, you can dig it out for 15, it's yours.
Can I bid?
questions? Put it in your yard, use it as a lawn ornament.
Tony, please. It's not pertaining to this issue, but I was wondering, at the October 26th meeting of the realignment, did the entire school board be present?
No.
No.
When does the public get to hear the school board's discussion on this issue?
At the committee meeting in November.
November
November
9th is when the final recommendation will come back to the board.
Is that when you vote?
No.
No, November 18th we vote.
I know it was stated earlier that you welcome new proposals. In order to do this, we need some numerical data. Will that be available to us? And who should we?
Mr.
I would
Keffer
address
will,
it to Mr. Keffer.
Other questions on the tank? If not, that's the end of our agenda. There's an executive session of the board tonight on negotiations. Thanks for coming.